When the officer first heard about Michael, he could not believe it was true. The man supposedly walked 20 miles to and from work every day. A very strange but true story. Michael was not very open about his reason, however, or anything about his job for that matter, and so the officer had to do some digging himself. And the policeman was completely stunned by what he ended up finding out about Michael. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Nobody in the area batted an eye anymore when they saw Michael walking in the street in the early hours of the day or very late in the evening. People who had said hello to him or asked why he was walking so quickly every morning only got very short responses. Most people just assumed that he was working really long days, which was not uncommon for people trying to work their way out of poverty. Michael's daily walks to work went on for about 2 months before somebody actually found out more about it. And that person was Maria, a woman that lived on the route Michael walked daily. She had to appear and speak at an event, but it was a 3-hour drive away, and so Maria had to leave extremely early. She waved him over, and after a bit of hesitation, Michael nervously approached her. Maria asked him where he was going and offered to give him a ride if it was on the way, but Michael was obviously reluctant to tell her where he needed to go. Eventually, he caved and named the place he was working at. Maria quickly typed into her navigation, and when she saw the route, it wiped the smile straight off her face. It was actually on her route to the event, but it was a lot further along that route than she expected. It was still 15 miles away. And according to Michael, he had already been walking for 5 miles today. She asked him if it was an incident that he had to go this far, but he confirmed to her that he needed to walk this distance every single day. Maria could not believe what she was hearing. She had seen that Michael could walk relatively fast, but that still meant he was probably walking about 4 hours to and back to work. She asked him why he did not take public transport to work, but a car, mope, or even bike. But Michael just looked at the ground, embarrassed. It was clear to Maria that he did not want to talk about the reality of the situation, but she still wanted to give him that ride. The drive to Michael's work took about 30 minutes. It was mostly quiet between Michael and Maria. She could not get a word out of him. Maria dropped him off at an industry terrain. She was willing to bring him closer to the entrance of his work, but Michael did not want to. He clearly did not want Maria to know where he worked either. The whole situation of that morning kept playing in Maria's mind during the entire day. The more Maria was thinking about it, the more she started to feel like he might be exploited by his employer, and that maybe that employer had a good reason for Michael having to keep his place of work a secret. Maybe they were partaking in some illegal activities. Maria managed to get in contact with an officer, Jack. He first responded fairly surprised, but he could not help but admit that the story of Michael was strange. Whether the man was being exploited or not, it was clear that he needed help. And maybe he or another officer could help him find that. And it was relatively easy to find Michael, seeing as he held such a rigid daily walking schedule. Maria knew just about where he was going, so that next morning, the police started to drive past the most likely walking route, and about 10 miles from Maria's house, Officer Jack found him. Michael looked very tired, which was no surprise as the poor man had already walked 15 miles by this point. When Officer Jack pulled up beside him, Michael seemed very startled and could barely get a word out when the officer started talking to him about how he was doing. Officer Jack explained that they had gotten some concerned reports from people who had seen him walking every single day, and he was hoping to get some answer from him about why he was doing it. But Michael was not about to make this easy. He just kept repeating that there was nothing wrong and that he was doing well. Officer Jack realized that he was hitting a brick wall here, and so he had to come up with a different approach. The officer thanked Michael for his time and drove off. At least he made Michael think that he drove off. Then he noticed where Michael was heading toward. There was a big factory at the end of the terrain, but it had been out of use for many years. It used to be a tobacco factory in the 90s, but it shut down because of many deaths and lousy working conditions. If Jack remembered correctly, the factory was due to be demolished at the end of this year. He saw Michael walking to a side door of the factory. He stopped and looked around him before pushing the door open. Officer Jack quickly hid behind a building and watched as Michael entered the building. What was he doing there for such a long time, day after day? So Officer Jack made his way inside the factory. He followed the sound of men talking and noticed two men working on something on the ground floor. The men were all dressed in dirty clothes and looked underfed, just like Michael. What was going on here? Suddenly, one of the floorboards Officer Jack was standing on gave away and landed on the ground floor with a bang. But instead of running upstairs and searching for the intruder, the men all fled the scene. What were they all so afraid of? Jack started walking around the factory now that everyone was gone and quickly noticed what was left behind. The floor was scattered with clothes and cardboard boxes. This only raised more questions with Officer Jack, as he expected to see something illegal or criminal. But he had never seen anything like this before. The policeman ran and arrested Michael and placed Michael under arrest. Michael tried to tell Officer Jack he wasn't doing anything wrong, but it didn't work. Once at the police station, Michael was placed in an interrogation room while Officer Jack looked at the test results. Officer Jack entered the interrogation room and sat down opposite Michael. "We found your DNA at the factory, Michael, together with the DNA of all of your other colleagues. Can you tell me what you were doing there?" "We know you walk every day to that factory. We know what you guys are doing there is illegal, and most of your colleagues are homeless. We know this could ruin all of your lives. Do you want us to arrest everyone for breaking into an abandoned building?" It wasn't the approach Officer Jack wanted to take, but Michael left him with no other choice. Michael was visibly taken aback by Officer Jack's threat, but it worked because Michael's demeanor suddenly changed. "Fine, I'll tell you, but please leave my colleagues out of this. Their lives are already a mess. They don't need more trouble." "I promise you, your colleagues will never know you were even here," Officer Jack said. But little did Michael know his colleagues' addresses weren't even in the system. Michael began. "We do sell clothes, but the clothes we sell are donated. It's unethical and wrong, but this job was the only job that paid me enough to care for my sick and uninsured mother. She's almost 95, and I can't just let her die." All right, Officer Jack responded. "But what's the name of the company?" Michael told Officer Jack everything he needed to know, and even remembered the name of the man who recruited him. Officer Jack immediately ordered the company to shut down and, in the following weeks, arrested the owner as well. Michael and his colleagues were never arrested. Officer Jack actually felt very bad for Michael and his colleagues. They were taken advantage of in their most vulnerable state by someone who only thought about making enough money. So Officer Jack did something no one expected. He gave them a new job. It wasn't much, but Officer Jack arranged for the men to work as cleaners. From there, they could save enough money to get a degree or provide for their families. Michael was very grateful for Officer Jack's mercy and was able to care for his mother until the very end.